Coming in number 5, need more children. If anyone ever says this phrase to you, feel free to run away at speeds previously unknown to man, or knock them out. You have my full support. However, if the individual in question ends up being a Wendigo, then you're probably not going to have much luck with either of those tasks. They're just too strong and too spooky. And they get what they want most of the time, as evidenced by the story told by a now deleted Reddit user. I wonder how they're doing these days. I'll do my best to abridge this story for the sake of the length of today's video, so here we go. A man, his girlfriend, and their 3-year-old son all went out of town on a camping trip. At the behest of his superstitious partner, our storyteller packed the classic camping supplies, plus a shotgun, rifle, combat knife, and machete. When they reached their campsite, they noticed that the park rangers were kind of on edge and didn't seem to notice that they brought a whole pile of weapons. Odd. Onwards they trudged though and set up camp. That night they witnessed a horrible scene. It looked like someone had brutally killed a large animal, a buck perhaps, and dragged it away by the antlers. Not an easy task by any metric. Unnerved but resolute, they ate dinner and fed their son, then went to bed. In the middle of the night, a strange noise echoed throughout the woods, waking the man. He sat up and heard what sounded like muffled crying, prompting him to peek outside of the tent. What he saw he couldn't quite explain. It was like an enormous deer, slightly misshapen with enormous antlers and a strangely human presence about it. The man didn't need to see anything else. He pulled out his gun and shot it multiple times, causing it to bleed and shriek. It didn't die though, and before it disappeared into the night, it said the words, "Need more children." The man and his panicked wife then passed out. The panic didn't disappear the next morning either, as their son was not in the tent with them. They called the police, who arrived to investigate the blood left by the creature, and the man seemed to overhear them say something about it getting more bold. Unfortunately, their son was never found. Coming in at number 4, the Texas Wendigo. Traditionally, Wendigo are only found along the East Coast forests, around the Great Plains of the United States, and in the areas surrounding the Great Lakes. It's not often that you'll hear stories of them coming from other places, but parts of Texas are indeed located upon the Great Plains. And this Wendigo in particular made quite the name for itself in the area. From 2016 onwards, folks from the Yorktown, Texas area reported seeing a hulking figure almost 10 feet tall lurking around forested areas. It became such a common sight that a lot of people decided to avoid the woods altogether for a while. One intrepid explorer wanted to get a closer look at the thing, so he started frequenting the spots that it was most often sighted. During his search, he heard many noises characteristic of a Wendigo, the sounds of wounded or dying animals, human-like shrieks, and even basic sentences, all meant to entice him into the woods. Whoever this guy was knew the Wendigo's tricks though, and stayed well away from anywhere he'd be vulnerable. One evening, with plenty of mist still hanging in the air, he ran into the real deal. In an opening, he saw an old metal structure and 2 white houses, and between them a tall, lanky figure. It seemed to be spying on the inhabitants of these homes with devious intentions. He tried to ignore it as best he could as it walked along the path. Suddenly, a wave of overwhelming dread hit him and he got to running. Looking back behind him, he noticed that the Wendigo was now on all 4s, but still stood at around 5 feet tall. Thankfully, it didn't give chase, as the man theorizes that this was because the Wendigo was more interested in the housebound prey. To this day, he still thinks about its bone-white skin, bald head, dark black eyes, and humanoid face. He hasn't revisited the area. Coming in at number 3, we've got the frogs. Sometimes a story will draw you down one path and then pull out a twist so devious your spine will stay tingled for weeks. This is just such a tale. What do frogs have to do with the Wendigo? Well, just sit back and listen and I'll tell you a tale. This comes from Reddit user Unathana, who has a long history of listening to frogs make noise at night. When they were a kid, their grandmother would reassure them that the croaking was actually good, as it kept the Wendigo away. Over time, they got used to the sounds and actually found them quite soothing. Flash forward many years, and Unathana is enrolled in post-secondary education, taking a course on Native American literature. The Wendigo that they're learning about here is described a little differently than they remember their grandmother talking about. Frogs don't really do all that much to protect against such a creature. A damn shame. They then moved to a new place on the edge of town within a stone's throw of a pond just packed with frogs. The noise was once again comforting to them, and they tended to keep their windows open to hear them and enjoy the balmy summer heat. However, the night they recounted this story, things were different. Gone was the heat as well as the sound of frogs. In fact, it was unseasonably cold and the night was quieter than ever. This did not bode well for Unathana, not one bit. Every passing second meant more dread, with nowhere to run or hide. The Wendigo is out there somewhere. Better watch out. Coming in at number 2, we've got Anansi's Goat Man. one of the best known Wendigo green text tales. The proliferation of spooky encounter stories on 4chan's paranormal board had a large impact on creepypasta culture in the early 2010s, usually told from a first-person perspective in bullet point form. Well, Anansi's tale starts as a green text, maybe to entice more readers to stick around, but soon becomes a more traditionally written story. It chronicles his trip out to Alabama to visit family and the very strange things that happened while in the rural landscape. He and some cousins went out to a little cabin/trailer in the woods and brought some neighbors and other local kids with them. At first, it was just a smell, something like copper or blood that washed over the area. Nobody could explain it, so they tried to ignore it. Then strange figures appeared in the trees making awful noises. Folks were freaked out, so they ditched the fire and went inside, which resulted in plenty of loud bangs at the door. Understandably, lots of people were scared and wanted to leave, but trekking back through the woods late at night with no weapons with all this going on seemed like a bad idea. They decided to stick it out till morning and then leave once whatever rednecks in the woods stopped messing with them. Soon they realized that there were 12 people in the cabin at some point, and now they were just down to 11. Uh-oh. So the next morning, some people left, but Anansi and his buddy Tanner stuck around with a few more folks. The copper smell came and left over and over again, and soon enough they realized that one of the people they were with was acting weird. She ran off slack-jawed into the woods and nobody saw her again. Tanner's cousin showed up later with a gun and claimed to have seen that girl gibbering alone in the woods. He tried to talk to her, but she didn't respond. Weird. On the last night everyone was at the cabin, somebody fired at the figure in the woods, causing it to scream and thrash for hours. During this time, everyone tried to get some sleep in the cabin while Tanner stood guard with the gun. Half asleep, he noticed someone come in from the bathroom and fall asleep on the floor. But that put their head count at higher than he remembered. It's a bad sign. Just to be safe, he continued to pretend to sleep in the guard chair and noticed that the new addition would convulse and thrash around from time to time. The next morning, everyone left except Tanner, who said he'd lock everything up. Checking the bathroom that the extra body came in from, he noticed that the bathroom window was wide open. Whatever this creature was, it was infiltrating their cabin and pretending to be another person the whole time. Horrifying. And finally, at number 1, we've got the gun nut green text. We'll cap off this list with one more green text similar to Anansi's story, but with a different twist. A group of friends from college decided to take a trip out to an uncle's cabin. The stench of blood and copper was just as prevalent here, and over time, the strange event stacked up. The friends heard their own voices off in the woods, calling out for people to come find them. Dead animals were left all over the property, culminating in 2 halves of a deer being thrown at the side of the cabin. Thankfully, these pals were all a bunch of gun nuts with experience making homemade thermite, and when the going got bad, they got to work. Preparing to leave the cabin in the middle of the night, they had different roles for dealing with their Wendigo assailant. Some took point with rifles, while others packed their things. But at the last moment, after one pal went running off into the woods to see what he could find, they noticed something odd. A figure looking like their friend who had just run off was in the back of the cabin, appearing extra disheveled, pretending to pack up with the rest of them. This was their sign to open fire, and toss one of their homebrew thermite grenades after it. Even then, they can't be sure that they actually put an end to whatever shapeshifting creature was stalking them. The cabin ended up as ash though, so they're not planning on visiting anytime soon.
Number 5. Queen Elizabeth. The late Queen Elizabeth was a legendary monarch. She served the most impressive reign of any sovereign ruler out there. It was like 80 years, and as such, she's host to all manner of conspiracy theory over the years, ranging from some fun, harmless ones to some wild and truly out of this world ones. But there's not an entirely small contingent of people who maintain that Queen Elizabeth and all of her children and all the royal Windsor family are descendants of reptilian alien overlords after one of the original Windsors mated with a reptile man. This is why people believe the royals are protective of their bloodline and keeping the family clean. Okay, you still with me? The reptiles only accept the very best, and I guess Meghan Markle didn't meet their standards. But there's a lot of people who think the Queen herself was one. There's a good bit of pictures and footage showcasing the Queen with bizarre black ovaloid eyes. Take a look at some of these, where her eyes are all like completely black, swollen over, or like sometimes she even has kind of like slit, like reptilian eyes. She looks way more like something out of a demonic possession movie, more than anything else if you're asking me. I think maybe possession over reptiles personally. Now the Occam's razor most probable answer is that whatever's happening to her here was a bloodshot eye, and that's what people online said about these and what most people agree is causing this bizarre looking phenomenon. And yeah, it was probably pretty likely that a very old woman had some health problems, but you have to admit it does look incredibly creepy, does it not? Kinda gives me that same vibe as in District 9 when Wickus was slowly turning into a prawn and started with him having a huge swollen yellow eye. So could the Queen have secretly been an alien overlord this entire time? I mean, it would certainly explain a lot of things. How she managed to stay looking that good for so long, and where all the power was really coming from. I think there's a Doctor Who episode about this exact thing. Now, if you want to watch more videos about wild conspiracies, cryptids, aliens, shapeshifters, and just about everything weird that goes bump in the night, subscribe to Top 5 Scary and keep the screams coming all night long. Now let's creep on creeping on. Number 4, JayZ. Hova is a lot of things. He's one of the most successful musicians of all time. He is a king of the Grammys. He's the first rapper to be inducted into multiple halls of fame he shouldn't even have been. He's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And to many, he's considered one of the greatest rappers of all time. His legacy precedes him. Now maybe it's because of his electric talent, his fast flow, his amazing production, or it could be because he's secretly powerfully connected to alien shapeshifters. Jay is the subject of numerous conspiracy theories regarding his overwhelming status. It's pretty popular to suggest that he's a puppet of the New World Order. He and his wife, and sometimes Ye gets involved in that too. That little diamond hand signal he flashes during shows is proof of his allegiance. That's him showing his hand to people. But there's also a very dramatic people who say on top of him being an Illuminati New World Order guy, he's also an alien shapeshifter and part of the race that secretly runs the planet. You see, a few years ago, several passengers of a United Airlines flight out of LAX claimed that they saw the billionaire Rockefeller Records mogul shed his human skin in front of all of them and reveal his true form to the passengers of the flight before saying some things about how the reptiles were controlling society. There are a bunch of tweets about this thing. There was like 20 to 30 tweets all coming out the same night, and I think we should highlight some of the more very entertaining ones. Very scary. He kept changing shape. He knew more and more people were watching, and he got angrier and angrier when he couldn't stop. Hashtag reptilian JayZ. The blank hit the fan in business class when JayZ lost control and started shapeshifting in front of the other passengers. Now, I'm not gonna outright decry this theory and shoot this one right down and say that definitely JayZ is not a reptile shapeshifting alien. Now, just because there's no video evidence whatsoever doesn't disprove this, but I think the big issue here is, are you really gonna look me in the eyes and tell me that a guy who raps lyrics like, "What's 50 grand to a MF like me, could you please remind me?" You think he flies commercial? You think he flies commercial business class? You think JayZ flies United out of LAX? Are you serious? He's a lizard person who runs a cabal that runs the entire world behind the shadows, and you seriously think he's flying business on United? There's a better chance of them making a second Watch the Throne album than there is to this theory being true, but I'm gonna be honest, I thought it was absolutely hilarious, so that's why I kept it in the video. Number 3, Obama's alien detachment. Now, it's a long-held conspiracy theory that the US government knows a lot more about aliens than they let on. It's one we talk about in pretty great detail on this channel, and honestly, I think there's something there. I think it holds more water than some of the other wacky conspiracies out there. There's definitely a lot of weird facts and mysteries regarding the US government and alien technology. But how far does it go, do you think? Is it possible that there are already alien shapeshifters inside the government who've attained high roles protecting our most important targets? Now, perhaps you've seen this footage if you're an avid conspiracy theory enjoyer. This is a bit of an old one, but this footage of President Obama at a press conference circa around 2013 seems normal until you take a look at the bizarre features of the security guard, looking a lot more in common with a gray alien than any human I've ever seen. Take a look at this guy and tell me honestly you don't think he looks even just a little reptilian. Now, this raises some fascinating questions. If there are shapeshifting aliens in the Secret Service, how far up do they go? Are there aliens at every seat of government? And more importantly, do alien shapeshifters get the same worker benefits that a human would? That's what I'm curious about. Is this guy entitled to the same half-hour break and statutory holidays? Or because of his alien status, does he have to work on Christmas and New Year's and doesn't even get time and a half? These are the questions I want the answers to. Now, funny enough, the American government actually addressed this rumor and conspiracy, which is unusual because really they don't usually do that. But in this case, they felt it necessary. A spokeswoman for the National Security Council spoke out and said, "I can't confirm the claims made in the video, but any alleged program to guard the president with aliens or robots would likely have to be scaled back or eliminated in the sequester. I'd refer you to the Secret Service or Area 51 for more details." Now, what's interesting here is she goes out of her way to avoid saying the words reptilian shapeshifter. How convenient, dodging the question. Number 2. Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga seems like the most obvious choice if there was any celebrity who would later turn out to actually have been an alien shapeshifter. I think we all kind of already suspect this about her, to be honest. Of all the people on this list, she seems like the one that would be the most outwardly forthcoming about her extraterrestrial origins. In fact, she might have outwardly confessed it in an interview with Stephen Colbert, where she recently told audiences that she's always really liked shapeshifting. Now, in the context of this interview, they're talking about a movie and they're talking about her changing her look with her makeup and all of her wild, crazy Gaga outfits. But what if this was just a rare moment of honesty, you know? In the interview, it does almost look like she's about to say something, like she's got something hiding on the tip of her tongue. She mentions seeing her real self on the screen, but then she pauses and composes herself hiding behind her poker face. Oh, that was a dumb joke. I don't know why I left that in. Sorry, I'm struggling. A number of viewers on The Tonight Show made similar comments about this, and if you go onto the YouTube video for this particular interview segment and just scroll through the comments for a bit, it's literally wall-to-wall comments of people talking about how this is proof that she's confessed to everyone on live TV the truth about her alien nature. Gaga is another one, like JayZ, who's been the subject of conspiracies for years. Like a lot of celebrities, she gets all the Illuminati ones, or people saying that she sacrificed someone for her fame, or that she's got ties to the occult and the devil. There was even a funny hubbub where people thought she was making something levitate to display her newfound telekinetic abilities. So she's no stranger to it. Do you think that maybe she was just having a bit of fun, poking the hornet's nest, so to speak? How often do you use the word shapeshifting when you're describing changing your appearance, unless you're an alien shapeshifter? Or maybe Gaga knows the word shapeshift. If she says that in an interview, a bunch of people will go wild about it, trying to slow down video of her eyes doing something weird, and maybe she just thinks it's funny. I could see Lady Gaga doing a little bit of trolling. Number 1. George H. Bush. President George Bush Sr. was the 41st president of the United States. He was many, many things. He was a world leader. He was a father. He had a cameo appearance on one of the funniest episodes of The Simpsons ever. And to some, he could possibly be proof of the alien shapeshifters having successfully infiltrated the highest level of government and controlling everyone around him. Like basically every single president who's ever sworn into office, there are conspiracy theories about just about everything. There are some who say he was involved in JFK, and there are some who say he's an alien. Check out this highly reputable TikTok showcasing what looks like the president's eyes, shape-shifting into its true form, those reptilian slits. He's being interviewed by President Clinton about some important government stuff. But is it all just a charade to cover up that they're having a meeting of alien minds? Are they laughing and taunting at us behind the camera? There's this kind of like air of superiority in his face while he's talking, and honestly, even if you don't buy into the shapeshifter alien secret cabal conspiracy, there is something unsettling about this clip, but maybe he just also has a bit of an unsettling face. You know, something I wonder about a lot of these shapeshifting conspiracy theories is, do you think the aliens ever get like self-conscious about having to hide themselves all the time? I imagine it's probably pretty stressful upholding a globe dominating conspiracy and also feeling like you have to wear a mask all the time and pretend to be somebody you're not. Like, I wonder if they ever just come home so tired and can't wait to take off their skin mask and let their tentacles out and let their true like reptilian fangs and show their real Zayton face and just kick back and be themselves. Like, that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this clip. City seems like he just wants to go home and be himself.
Number 5 on this list is the orange eyes. As a decently recent university graduate, this story is pretty triggering to me. User John shared his story of how a relaxing midnight stroll turned terrifying when he came face to face with 2 skinwalkers. According to his chilling story, John was out late one summer night. While listening to music and enjoying the cool weather, he walked near a large empty field that was adjacent to a college campus. Suddenly, he felt something staring at him. Shining his flashlight out into the darkness, he saw 2 sets of glowing orange eyes staring back at him. The eyes were at least 7 feet off the ground and stared at him without blinking once. John made a mad dash for safety. As he was running, he turned back to see one of the creatures chasing him. John became even more frightened when he got a better glimpse of the fast-moving creature behind him. It looked like a giant wolf. Quickening his pace, John reached his home safely, but he remains fearful of the monsters he saw that night, which he believes were skinwalkers. I titled this entry Orange Eyes because that plus the fact that they were 7 feet off the ground are the biggest things that stick out to me here. A wolf's eyes aren't typically bright orange. They can be a mild hue of that color, but I doubt that it was a mild hue if that's the first thing that stuck out to him in the night. Not to mention the fact that these creatures were 7 feet off the ground and how unnatural that is. Even if for some reason a wolf stood on its hind legs, it still wouldn't be that tall. Whatever it was that was after John that evening doesn't sound like the friendliest of creatures if you ask me. He's probably pretty lucky to have made it out alive. Number 4 on this list is the white face. This story is especially scary because it seems like the Skinwalker is actually stalking our victim. Ranker says, "My roommate has told me this story a few times and I want to see if anyone else has had similar experiences. As he tells it, he was driving home super late at night, maybe around 3 or 4 a.m. in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona, both times that this occurred. The first time he was driving alone on a road that has an open field to the left of it when out of nowhere a black figure on all fours bounds up out of the field and across the road in front of his car. As soon as the figure got to the other side of the road, it stops with inhuman quickness, turns around, and looks directly at my roommate. He described the figure as looking simian, completely black except for the face. The creature's face was a stark white human face. Not white as in Caucasian, but white as snow. This happened again a few weeks later, but this time the creature was sitting in a tree. As his car approached, it climbed down the tree, again with inhuman quickness, bounded across the road, stopped on a dime, and turned around and made eye contact with him. This time he had a friend in the car who also saw it and began freaking out. It was the same exact thing as the first time, a simian black body with a snow white expressionless human face. My roommate, ever the curious one, turned the car around and began searching for the creature, but it was nowhere to be seen. What has a totally black and creature-like body but also a white as snow pale human face? I'll answer that one for you guys. A skinwalker. Scariest part about this one, like I said earlier, is the fact that it went out of its way to find this same guy again. I find it hard to believe that he just happened to stumble upon this creature just out of coincidence. I think it's far more likely that the creature was looking out for this guy and putting itself into spots that it might run into him. Really not a pleasant thought if you think about it. Number 3 on this list is the white mask. This one is kind of similar to the last one we looked at, but instead of a pale white face, it seemed as if the creature was wearing a white mask. Ranker says, in Hunt for the Skinwalker, George Knapp and Colm Kelleher relay the stories of those who came into contact with skinwalkers near Native American tribal lands. One account from a New Mexico highway patrol officer states that while patrolling the highways of New Mexico, he saw a skinwalker on 2 separate occasions. In his first encounter, a creature wearing a white mask appeared next to his window, seemingly attaching itself to the car door. But then he realized it was simply running beside the vehicle, keeping pace at highway speeds. A few days later and around the same area, he encountered the creature again. What makes this tale even more intriguing is that at least one other officer claimed to have seen the same ghoulish being while patrolling the area. Maybe it was actually a white mask that our friend saw in the previous entry instead of the white face he described. Either way, this one seems dangerous as all holy hell. To be able to run with a car going on the highway? Yeah, that is pretty far from natural, guys. I'd say that considering there were multiple witnesses here, this is probably some of the best proof we have that these creatures are legit. Number 2 on this list is No Ordinary Girl. This is a story, as you may have guessed, about a girl that probably wasn't a girl. Ranker says, the tale of terror comes all the way from Australia. While walking her dogs out in the Australian bush, a woman encountered a fearful sight. She was enjoying the trail when suddenly her 2 dogs started barking uncontrollably and becoming extremely agitated. Soon she saw what appeared to be a small female child no older than 7. The child had her back to the woman, who was only a bit startled at first as she believed the child was just part of a camping party. However, when the girl turned around, her eyes were lifeless and entirely black. Before the woman could make a break for it, the creature let out an ear-splitting howl and ran off into the bush, never to be seen again. She was left wondering if the child she saw was someone pulling a prank prank on her or if it really was a shape-shifting skinwalker. She may never know. Maybe the scariest part about this one is that if this story is true, it means skinwalkers can be found outside of America. Conventional wisdom has kind of said that these creatures are only in North America, but that might not be true. If they're all the way in Australia, then they could literally be anywhere. Hopefully it was just a prank, but based on the circumstances, I kinda doubt it. And finally, number 1 on this list is the 6 Men. This is another story about how some type of beasts were able to keep up with a car. Ranker says, my friend's mission region had a reservation within its boundaries. However, it was relatively far from where he was serving. On one occasion, him and his mission companion were asked to travel further than usual to meet some investigators. This took them near the reservation. On their way home, their car ran out of gas, and it wasn't until late at night that they were able to continue the journey home. My friend chose a different route that took him through some back roads in an attempt to get home sooner. He told us he was driving above the speed limit when he noticed movement in the woods lining the road. Because coyotes were common in the area, he took little notice at first. Then he looked out the window and slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop jolted his companion awake, who immediately wanted to know what was wrong. My friend was shaken, and he said he would tell him once they got home. He asked him to say a prayer. By the time they made it home, his companion was dying to know what had happened. My friend told him, I looked down at the road next to the car and saw 6 men running on all fours, keeping up with the car. I was driving 40 miles an hour. 6 dudes on all fours keeping up with a car going 40 miles an hour. Usain Bolt, the fastest man of our generation in his best race ever, reached a top speed of 27.33 miles per hour. That's the fastest man in the world running the fastest he's ever run on 2 legs, and he still doesn't come close to touching what the car was doing. One thing is definitely clear from doing this video, guys. Skinwalkers, if they are real, are clearly fast as hell. And if one decides that it wants to target you, I don't know if you're gonna be able to escape.
Number 5, weird goat. Coming up first on our list of unsettling skinwalker encounters is this strange footage that's been making the rounds around TikTok, and understandably why when you see, how weird this is. Take a quick look for me. It looks like a cute little goat at first. As cute as a goat can be, no goat hate. Until it gets up close to the front door and stares, there's just something off about this thing, you know? Goats are kind of weird looking as is, but this one looks like it's got a secret behind its eyes, or it's giving you that look where it's asking you if you have any games on your phone. It just looks wrong, you know? In that indescribable uncanny valley way. Especially as it's shown when the video cuts back again and we see the goats almost got like dog looking eyes. It certainly does not look like any goat that I have ever seen. That's for certain. Now, I couldn't tell you if this is a skinwalker in disguise wearing a goat costume or just a goat being particularly bizarre, which is not entirely unheard of. Goats are considered one of the more demonic animals. They're very commonly associated with Satan and Lucifer and all sorts of hellish manners. It's said that skinwalkers are Danae witches who have gone against the natural order of things and use powerful magic to be able to take the form of any animal that they so please. As some local legends say that a way to suss out a skinwalker is through their eyes, being able to see them shine differently than normal. That would certainly explain what's going on with this goat's bizarre eyes, and unless there's any goat experts out there in the comments that can help me out with this one, I'm really not sure what we're looking at besides something terrifying. And if you're looking for more terrifying stories about skinwalkers, cryptids, aliens, really just about anything scary under the sun, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click through, find something to like, stay subscribed, stay scared, but please, keep watching this video. We did work pretty hard on it. Alright. Back to it. We got way more skinwalker stories for you coming up. Number 4, Idaho. Now, Idaho is pretty well known in the paranormal community as being a place where a lot of strange stuff is going on. It's no Ohio, but it's up there as far as scary states go. Our first freaky story is gonna come to us from a Redditor, Chuck Wool, sharing their story on the Skinwalker subreddit. Here we go, listen to this. It was mid-November 2021 and me and a bunch of friends were camping in the woods in the Sawtooth National Forest near Petite Lake. There were 2 groups of people in 2 tents and 1 in a car, and my buddy and I in hammocks near the edge of the camp. It's about 1 a.m. and we had all been sleeping for about 2 hours. I wake up to my hammock mate panting extremely heavily and yelling my name, and I'm a bit confused and I get up and help him. He's paralyzed by fear. He said that he had extremely vivid dreams, that there was a tall and slender, all black figure figure trying to break into his car after he'd seen the figure take my head off and the rest of our friends. You know, normal, everyday, fun, campfire dreams under the stars kind of deal. He said that he woke up and he swore he saw the figure near the car and that he saw all of our heads on sticks. I was obviously pretty freaked out at this point, as I think most people would be, and I immediately felt very uneasy. I told him it was just a bad dream and that he should go back to sleep. One of our buddies yells, proceeding to wake up most of the camp, and we find that our friend in the car that my buddy said clicked the car alarm. So all of us, scared and awake now, have a conversation about what is going on. And my friend in the car says that he heard something scratching on the window and said that he saw a slender black figure running around the car. And the next morning we all talked about what had happened. And 6 of them all had similar nightmares describing similar things. Tall, slender black figures, heads on pikes, the whole scary 9 yards. We had friends that had stayed at the same site 6 months earlier, and a few of them felt like they were being watched. There are strange things afoot in the Idaho mountains. So what do we think, my top 5 scary gang? Skinwalkers? Witches? Slenderman? Or just something in the coffee? Number 3, Iowa sighting. Our next story comes to us from Reddit once again, from the subreddit r/true scary stories. Not to imply the other stories we've been sharing are fake, just that these ones are definitely real. And quick shout out for the Reddit scary horror story community as a whole, putting all these campfire stories in one beautiful digital archive. Coming to us from a user, a weird doggo 64, love that name. They write, as a native, I think me and my mother had a close call with a skinwalker. Now this story I had to trim just the tiniest little bit for timing purposes, so it's paraphrased ever so slightly, but the story's been mostly left intact. My family has lived in Iowa since July of 2017, and we live in a small neighborhood with a minimum of maybe 25 houses, and it's surrounded by forestry. I've seen a bunch of horror movies over the years, so I get pretty paranoid. A year into living there, we get a new dog, and we named him Tucker. He's an energetic little guy with everybody. Now a couple years later, my mom and dad get divorced, and she moved on to a guy that lives a couple miles away from the house. My mom and dad settled on a pretty good schedule for when they could spend the day with us. Now my mom's side is my native side, and we do believe in the lore of skinwalkers. One day, it's my mom's turn to look after us. She's driving up this road surrounded by a bunch of trees and farms. There's a hill on this road, and as my mom drove up the hill, she saw something in a field that she described as being tall, gray-skinned, and had hooves for feet, and it was walking into the woods. Well, when she reached to a stop sign, she looked back in her mirror and nothing. Now my mom was terrified because she remembered the stories of skinwalkers she would hear as a girl. A couple days later, it was nighttime, and my dog had to go outside to the bathroom. I put him on a leash that's connected to the porch. I turned on a light that was outside so I could see where he was going, and I heard him barking. I walked towards the door and I told him to get in, and I look into the darkness to see nothing but eyes shining from the porch light. I pulled him in and I slammed the door as soon as he got outside. I covered every window in the house. It's been 2 months since then, and my routine when it gets dark was what I did when I saw those eyes. I closed the blinds, I locked the doors, and I turn off the lights. Something creeping in the dark? Raccoons? Skinwalkers? What do you think? Number 2. Wow, man, my titles for this one are really good, eh? Sighting. Skinwalker sighting. Our next story was also posted to the Skinwalker subreddit by user MothGirl11. It's the freshest one up on the list too, posted just 11 days ago, so I hope they're doing well. It starts by saying, I have recently learned what skinwalkers are, and it completely made sense of an event that had happened to me when I was younger that I previously blocked out of my brain. I was visiting my mom's family in California with my parents and siblings. I'd been there before, and I always slept alone on an air mattress in the living room, which had a greenhouse glass pane wall to the front of the house. It was a usual summer evening and everyone was settled into bed. I remembered that I used to like staying up late playing games on my DS. Yeah, I've been getting a little sleepy when I started to hear strange rustling noises coming from the outside. I sat up and peered outside, but I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. The road outside was dimly lit. A few minutes pass and I tell myself it's just a strange animal or something. I laid myself back down, something across the street caught my eye, and I darted back up. Silently, I saw what appeared to be 2 coyote-like figures, only they were walking on their hind legs, which looked much bigger than their front ones. They appeared to be 6, maybe 7 feet tall, and the scariest part was there was absolutely no noise while they moved. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. One of them turned to look towards me and I ducked my head down. At the time, I didn't think anything other than that I was freaked out. I never asked anyone about it, and it was only as an adult that I realized that there are no animals like the ones I saw. You've got to be a really brave kid, I think, to see two 7-foot-tall bipedal coyotes and think, yeah, that's just something coyotes do. I would spend the rest of my life buying silver bullets and drawing like salt circles on the floor. Oof. Alright, and at number 1, the new property. Our final story comes to us from someone who might have cursed themselves into moving into a haunted property. Let's take a listen to this posted on a paranormal subreddit by user 1additional2103. It starts by saying, we've been living at this new house for 13 days. We've been taking some suggestions for cleansing the home to get any bad vibes out, but there's a creepy pattern happening. For the 3rd time, I just found bones just outside our door. Hey, whoa. Stop the track. Stop the music. Stop the narration. Stop everything. This was the 3rd time you found bones outside your front door, and you didn't burn your house down and move 6 states over. Anyway, okay, yeah, moving on. A few nights ago, there was a pile of smaller bones by the door leading to the front porch. This is a really clear message. On one of the first few nights, there was a long bone by the rear door right where I found a deer skull. I didn't think anything of it the first few times. Again, aside, I'm not sure why, but whatever. I gotta move on from this. Assuming the long bone was left there by a previous owner, and I chalked up the pile to an animal, but it's kind of weird that it's happened 3 times now, and each time by a door. The other strange things happening to me are I can't get the motion lights to work outside at all. They were already installed. I changed bulbs twice now in them, and they worked when I went inside, but the next night they didn't. So I'm just chalking this one up to bad wiring. A few times I've heard very strange sounds coming from the woods. I'm an avid hunter and I do a lot of camping, and I've never heard anything like this before. It kind of sounds like a propeller chopping through wood. Do either of these things sound like I'm dealing with something out of my league? I'm sorry if these are dumb questions and stories, but there's just something about this property that makes me worried. Dude, you mentioned that bones keep showing up on your front door. You live in the same forest as the Blair Witch, man. You gotta move. Yeah, you're dealing with something above your head. Oh, you don't even need to go to the internet or Reddit for this one.